we literally went to like the Canadian Tire and bought like toaster ovens and hot plates. And, you know, because we had to order all new equipment that was going to be like a week or 2 weeks to get in. And we're just like, okay, you know what? This is what we're going to do. And we opened up the kitchen 24 hours later with like a limited, limited menu, basically cooking on hot plates and toaster ovens.
Like, we started selling this product out of the trunk of our cars.
Don't be afraid to fail.
Inventory management is about balance.
Get the product out. That's number one.
I've always preached sustainable growth.
So we just started building community.
Look at the data.
Product development is everything.
Yeah, we say we're a brick, click, and pop.
But you have to love what you do.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Merchant Mastery Podcast. This is a extra special episode because I am joined by my new co-host, Enta. Enta works, she's a senior media buyer on Socialite, so our sister agency, but she was also co-hosting our virtual Shopify Meetup Seattle with me this week. So Enta is not new to the Merchant Mastery side. And Enta, I'll let you say hello and introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, Ivana. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Nita, and I work as a senior media buyer with Socialite, sister agency of Merchant Mastery, and I'm loving it. Thank you.
I'm glad you're loving it, Enta.
Definitely.
All right. And of course, today we are also joined by Mitch Cobb. So Mitch is the co-founder and CEO of Upstreet Craft Brewing and Libra non-alcoholic craft beer based in Charlottetown, PEI, Prince Edward Island, for those of us not in Canada. And, you know, Mitch was actually named one of Atlantic Canada's top 50 CEOs by Atlantic Business Magazine, which is quite the accomplishment. He's also won 2 Greater Charlottetown Area Chamber of Commerce President's Awards. And I mean, all of this before, I think it was before your 3rd year in business. So Mitch, welcome. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So quite an impressive resume there. But Mitch, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, your background, how you got into the beer industry and how you got started?
Yeah, geez. So it's a bit of a story, depending on how far you want me to go back.
As far back as you'd like, Mitch.
Well, and I mean, it's it's interesting because you kind of need to go far back to understand, you know, the mission of Upstreet and how it came to be. So like going way back to university. I did my undergrad in anthropology and international development. And so business wasn't really on my radar at all. In fact, I kind of thought I was going to go into a career in the sort of community nonprofit sector. And so spent, you know, kind of the first 4 or 5 years in that area doing a lot of community education and working with different organizations, and then kind of, you know, realized that like maybe there wasn't very much upward mobility there, and started to get interested in business. And my wife and daughter and I ended up spending a year in Southeast Asia, and that's where I really started to get interested in entrepreneurship. Just kind of traveling. It was actually in Bali, and seeing just everyone was hustling, you know, everyone was doing something for themselves, you know, and I kind of started to, you know, talk to people about what they did, like locals, but also expats who, you know, were running import export businesses. And, you know, it really kind of triggered something in me. So when I came back, I started an international student recruiting company because I had previously worked in immigration. And I did that for about 2 years. And, you know, when I was starting it up, I really thought, well, geez, like how hard can it be to be in business? Look at all these other guys in business, and really quickly realized that I was probably in over my head, especially trying to start an international business with basically no business experience at all. So I did do it, and I did it for 2 years, and then there were some kind of flaws in my business model, I guess you could say, and so left that, but really loved business. So I went back to school and did my MBA. And while I was doing my MBA, I started to learn about B Corp and started, kind of studying about like social enterprise and businesses that, had a strong social purpose, like Ben and Jerry's and Patagonia. And that was a real kind of turning point for me, because up until that stage, these two things sort of existed at polar opposite ends of the spectrum, and the whole idea of community and business coming together, and that, businesses could be profitable and still, contribute to the community and have a good, social purpose, was like this light bulb moment for me. So that really stuck with me. And I was, still super interested in entrepreneurship. And I started teaching at Holland College and did that for a few years. And so finally, I met Mike Hogan, who's my business partner now, and he was a big home brewer. And so he and I and another buddy used to, home brew beer. We'd go over and help him, and we just kind of started talking about how much fun it would be to start a brewery. It's kind of like every 30-year-old male's dream, to own their own brewery. And, and it really kind of hit me that, like this could be the opportunity where we could create this really cool business that, has a lot of community impact, that, is kind of can be successful and profitable, but can, do business a bit differently than business was done traditionally, and that we could become B Corp certified and, have a large community impact. So, we started talking and meeting over beers, and things kind of got more and more serious until we kind of reached a point where we were like, if we don't move forward with this, we're definitely going to regret it. And yeah, so as they say, the rest is kind of history.
And what does B Corp certified mean? So you've brought it up a few times, and that was an important part of starting a business for you guys. What does that mean to be a certified B Corporation?
Yeah, so B Corp is a certification process similar to fair trade, what fair trade is to coffee or organic is to vegetables. B Corp is a certification process for businesses, and basically what it is, it's an assessment that looks at your corporate governance, your impact on the environment, your impact on your employees, and your impact on the community, and basically certifies that you're working in the best interest of all of the stakeholders, not just shareholders, but working in the best interest of the community, your employees, the environment, and shareholders as well. So it takes quite a while to get certified. You go through a process where you have to go through interviews and give documentation and so then once you get through the process, then you can say that you're a B Corp certified company. And the sort of objective is that that you are continuously trying to improve your business for the better of the planet.
So, and how long did that process take? You said it does take a little bit.
Yeah, so you can't actually become B Corp certified until you've been in business for 2 years, until you have 2 sets of financials, because they don't want it's based on what you've already done, not what you plan to do, kind of thing. So, and so that was really good for us because we knew we wanted to be B Corp certified from the time we started the business. We were able to sort of set the business up in a manner, that would make it easier, I guess, for the certification process. But, from it took about, I'd say, a year, to get all the documentation, and I mean, that was a big piece of it. Even though we were doing all of the things, it was making sure that all of the things that we were doing to get certified were documented, and that we could show proof of all of the things that we needed to.
Nice. So I'm wondering, how long have you been in business again, Mitch?
We have been in business for 6 years, actually, coming up on June 26th.
coming right up.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you told us a story of how Upstreet started and all, and I'm really curious, like, how did you go from making alcoholic beer, right, to Libra non-alcoholic? What prompted that change? What were you thinking?
Yeah, it was it kind of came, I mean, we started working on it about almost 2 years ago, you know, and there were sort of two things that converged. One being that, you know, we sort of seen that non-alcoholic beer in Europe, I mean, we follow trends very closely, and we've seen that non-alcoholic beer was starting to grow in Europe, and we sort of started to talk about it, about what that would look like. But we also like went through some changes ourselves, I would say. I mean, for myself personally, after, you know, being in the beer business, you know, by that stage, we had a brewery here. We had 2 bars in Charlottetown and a restaurant in Halifax and another brewery over there. You know, I was really living the lifestyle that you would expect of someone who owned a brewery and restaurants and bars. You know, I was eating out all the time. I was drinking lots of beer. Life was really good. And then it kind of hit a point where, like, you know, it wasn't that good anymore. I gained a bunch of weight and I wasn't feeling good, and I was getting gout, and, you know, and like, it's like, I need to make a change. I need to, you know, I need to lose some weight, and I, you know, I just need to take better care of myself if I, you know, if I want to succeed in life and in business. So, you know, I made a commitment to, you know, I mean, it started kind of like, I made a commitment to lose some weight, you know, and so as part of that, you know, I mean, craft beer is super high in calories. Like, there's no other way to say it, you know, and if you're drinking a bunch of them in the run of a week, like, so, you know, I cut out craft beer, and then eventually, you know, really cut back on alcohol consumption in general. And so that was sort of the tipping point, you know, when I was like, gosh, you know, I still loved that whole craft beer experience, loved going out to restaurants and meeting up with friends, and I didn't want to go out and drink water, and, you know, like, you feel like an outsider, you know, so we started talking about like what it would look like to make a non-alcoholic craft beer. And so, you know, we did a ton of research into the different methods of making non-alcoholic beer. You know, traditionally it's made, you know, where the beer is made and then the alcohol is boiled off. But, you know, in boiling off the alcohol, you also boil off a lot of the flavors. And, you know, we tried reverse osmosis, and we looked into vacuum stills, which are super expensive, and kind of ended up creating our own method of making non-alcoholic beer, where it's made very much the same way that we make our traditional craft beer, but we just make small changes to the process so that it only ferments out to 0.4%. So, you know, that took a while. And then, yeah, we were able to release it in the fall of last year.
So my question is about, so it is classified as a non-alcoholic beer, right? But I think it said it was like 0.4% alcohol. So how does, explain that to me? How does that work? That it's like, it's called a non-alcoholic beer, but then it does have a little bit of alcohol?
It's low alcohol, right?
So, you know, to be completely honest,
Yeah.
it's not a gray area, but it changed. So in Canada, the CFIA defines anything under 1% as non-alcoholic.
Okay.
You know, so 0.4%, you know, would be, you know, it's a trace amount of alcohol that would be similar to what you would find in kombucha, you know, or orange juice even. So it's trace amounts, you know, and because, you know, we're seeing this sort of growth in non-alcoholic beers, I think we're going to see the language around it change. Like, I'm already seeing, you know, like non-alcoholic being 0.0, low alcohol. Like, low alcohol is kind of a funny term too, because low alcohol I've seen used for like a 3% beer, but I've also seen used for a 0.5% beer. So in Canada, you know, I think we'll probably see some changes in the regulations at some point in the future. In the States, anything under 0.5%, is considered non-alcoholic, but you can't call it beer. You have to call it near beer. So it's all kind of weird regulatory thing, but yeah.
Yeah, like so for an alcoholic beer, though, what's the kind of average percent alcohol in it?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the average is probably 5% for a regular What,
I don't know. I had
say?
0.5 in my head, so I'm like, well, you're only 0.1% off. But no, this sounds
like a regular alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
So the average would be 5% for a beer. Light beers are usually 4%. Strong beers like IPAs, double IPAs, are 6, 7, 8, could be up to 10%, really. But we're seeing that. We're definitely seeing a shift to more lower alcohol beers, so we see a lot of 4% beers, 3.5%, 3% beers, because I think that that's kind of where the market's going. That's what people are looking for. I think health and wellness is becoming a big, especially coming out of the pandemic. Health and wellness is top of mind, and so we're seeing things sort of shift towards the lower spectrum.
And how did you come up with the name Libra? Because I mean, I see the reviews online where people are like, "Oh, I'm a Libra, so I love Libra." So, Mitch, on behalf of all the Aquariuses of the world, is there anything coming for us, please?
I mean, it was, we looked at a ton of names. We definitely go down a lot of different rabbit holes when we're naming some of our products, but we wanted something that represented what we were trying to do, and really what we were trying to do is to help people find their balance. And so Libra, with the means balance in Latin, and so that was sort of the inspiration for that.
Cool. And I know you started Libra after you had run Upstreet for quite a while, a few years, right? About 3-4 years before Libra came on board. Were there any surprises with launching into non-alcoholic beer? Because I mean, you've been in the industry, you've pretty much seen it all, seen that, done that, and got a t-shirt. Were there any surprise challenges, anything you did not foresee, that was really, really difficult when you were launching now with Libra?
Oh gosh, just like running through a list of them in my head here. Like, where do I start? For us, I mean, the other thing that was really attractive to us about having a non-alcoholic beer was the ability to sell it online, and to sort of be able to operate outside the confines of liquor commissions, which, so if you're selling in Alberta is a little bit different than the rest of Canada, because alcohol can be sold in, grocery stores, supermarkets. It's a fairly free market, but in the rest of Canada, everything is controlled by the liquor commissions. And so it's tricky, and there's a lot of regulations around it, and it's hard, and there's markups, and you're dealing with government bodies that are buying your product. So, there's restrictions and roadblocks to that. So for us, it was like, we're going to create this product, and it's going to be great, and we're going to be able to sell it into grocery stores, and we're going to be able to sell it online, and it's going to be so much easier than selling alcohol. So I think the biggest surprise, which shouldn't have been a surprise at all, is that it's like not at all easier to start selling online, or to start selling into like grocery stores or any stores. The same challenges sort of exist. That was probably the big, and that was definitely the biggest surprise. And also for us, this wasn't so much a surprise, but it's been a challenge, is because it's non-alcoholic, there's a lot more food safety issues that we have to contend with, so we've had to be very cognizant of building very strong processes and implementing really strong food safety processes and protocols, and in order to brew Libra. versus alcohol, because, you know, when you're brewing alcohol, the food safety issues aren't quite as prevalent because alcohol kills a lot of stuff. Yeah, so that wasn't so much a surprise, but it's definitely been a challenge and you know, a change in our mindset in terms of how we produce.
Yeah, and I like I think you said earlier that you guys were looking for, you know, towards like Europe where non-alcoholic beverages were on the rise. And I remember reading something like the non-alcoholic beer sales were up 44% in the US in May 2020 compared to like 2019. And I think I saw these referred to as like NOLO drinks, I guess like no non-alcoholic, short for non-alcoholic. But even like big booze brands are pouring money into this like NOLO market, you know, like Guinness and Budweiser and Stella. They've all kind of launched their non-alcoholic beers too. So do you see this reflected in your sales? Have you seen kind of maybe like a downward trend in your actual like alcoholic craft beer and then an upward trend in Libra, or are you still sort of collecting some data on that?
You know, we're still collecting data. We haven't seen a dip in our alcoholic sales. You know, but also, you know, on the alcohol side of things, we're also continuing to innovate on that side, and so, you know, we're really steering more towards, again, in that category, more towards the health and wellness category as well, okay, with like lower alcohol, low carb, low calorie craft beers. You know, we launched Rewind vodka seltzer in the last year. So, you know, on the alcohol side of things, it's really been a shift from, you know, craft beer growing to hard seltzers and vodka sodas and those types of drinks really picking up. So, you know, we've seen a shift there. I don't know at this stage that non-alcoholic beer has impacted beer sales that we see very much, but I feel like it's going to, you know, it's, I had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine who owns a company in Nova Scotia, a spirits company. And, you know, we're sort of seeing, like, there's always sort of been two camps. There's the people who are calorie sensitive and they're sensitive to, you know, carbs and alcohol percentage. And then there's the camp who don't care. Basically, you know, and so, you know, that's sort of, you know, that camp that was always concerned about calories, you know, is sort of what drove like hard seltzer and what was driving like low alcohol or low calorie beers. And, you know, I think sort of through the pandemic, what we're seeing is that the people who don't really care still don't really care. They're going to drink whatever they want, you know, and they probably care even less because, you know, they're just like,
I'm gonna
whatever.
What else am I going to do? Everything's locked down. Yeah.
and that group of people who, you know, were looking for those low calorie, low carb beverages are shifting more towards not drinking at all or drinking way less. You know, because like when you look at sort of the sales stats, you know, a lot of the RTDs and higher alcoholic beers are doing quite well. You know, the low calorie, low carb seltzers are still doing well, but they're not kind of trending the way that they used to be. And so our theory, anyway, this is completely our theory, is that, you know, those people are have shifted even further, and, you know, they're choosing, you know, not to drink during the week, or they're choosing not to drink at all, or they're, you know, they're choosing to drink less when they do drink. So I think that that's going to drive non-alcoholic beer sales. I think in the next couple of years, we're really going to see things take off.
I mean, so piggybacking off that, so with that backdrop, how are you differentiating Libra, you know, from this crowded space, this crowded non-alcoholic space?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is going to be interesting because it's definitely a category that I wouldn't say that it's super crowded yet, but I think it's going to get crowded.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for us, we're really trying to position Libra as like a true craft, non-alcoholic beer. So, you know, we're really focused on creating true to style, you know, flavorful craft beers. You know, and so for us, like, you know, so certainly differentiating it from, you know, your Heineken 0.0s or your sort of macros, you know, but really, you know, giving non-alcoholic craft beer drinkers the same experience that craft beer drinkers get, where you can, you know, experiment and try different things. And, you know, it's really interesting if you go onto Facebook groups of non-alcoholic, you know, beer appreciation groups kind of thing, you know, and there's really the same sentiment that you get from craft beer, where people are really excited to try something new and talk about the beers that they're trying and share with other people, and, you know, share information. And so we're really positioning ourselves to be able to, you know, produce a lot of different non-alcoholic craft beers that you know, taste great, that are true to style, and that are experimental, and that people are really going to love.
Yeah, I was actually scrolling through Instagram, of course, the other day, and I came across some like calorie details about different drinks, and I was honestly shocked because I had no idea. Like, so it was comparing wine, beer, and like a gin and tonic, or, you know, vodka, soda, something like that. And so the four glasses of wine were about 500 calories. 4 glasses of beer were over 600. And then the gin and tonic was almost 800, which, you know, I thought, hey, it's just like, it's tonic, it's gin. Like, how can it be almost 700 calories? So when you put it into that perspective, if you're out, you know, a night with your friends, you know, a longer night, it's easy to down like 4 glasses of something, right? So I think with Libra, it's 30 calories per can, right? I think that's what I saw.
Yeah.
So when you set out to create this kind of healthier alternative, but with all the flavor, did you have this like calorie number in mind, or was that kind of it just kind of happened as you were making it? Like, how do you control that calorie number?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had we didn't necessarily have 30 calories. I mean, you know, obviously when you take the alcohol out, you know, that's a big piece of the calories. But even in different ways, when you use like a, you know, vacuum distillation or reverse osmosis, the calories in non-alcoholic beer can still be quite high. I mean, you know, our goal was to create something that was like relatively low in calories, you know, for exactly that reason. Like, it's crazy the number of calories that you can consume in the run of an evening if you're having 4 or 5, you know, craft beer, like pints. You know, it's over 1,000 calories. It could be, you know.
Easy,
yeah. So, you know, I think that's like a real selling feature of non-alcoholic beers is, you know, and especially with Libra, is that you can get all of that craft beer flavor with 30 calories. So you don't even have to really think about how many you're drinking. You know, it's so low.
Yeah, I think sometimes I have heard, you know, kind of the craft beer side of it almost get compared to, you know, like the coffee connoisseurs as well. So similarly, like non-alcoholic beverages, I've seen them compared to decaf, where people are like, well, why have the coffee without the caffeine? Or, you know, why have the beer without the alcohol if you can't get the, you know, the little buzz from it? So, you know, but there are some people that just truly enjoy the flavor of like a good craft beer or like a really good cup of coffee. So how do you keep that authentic, that like beer, you know, the pale ale flavor without the alcohol?
Yeah. You know what? I hear that all the time too. And I mean, I'm used to it at this stage, and it, you know, for some people, sure. You know, that's definitely a thing. But, you know, just to sort of respond to that, that statement that, like, you know, why bother is, you know, I think for me personally, and why I drink non-alcoholic craft beer is the flavor. You know, I do enjoy the flavor, and some people kind of scoff at that, but it's also about the experience. You know, it's also about like, you know, I want to have a beer, but it's Tuesday and I still have to go to the gym. And, you know, if I have a beer, I'm going to be tired and I'll probably have a second one. And then I'm going to skip the gym, you know, and then I may have a third, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and feel crappy because I didn't go to the gym and I drank 3 beer, and, you know, and so Libra or non-alcoholic beers in general are like that perfect drink for that occasion, or being able to go out and sit around, like I said earlier, and not have to drink water, and to be able to have something to talk about and try it and sample it and say, oh geez, this is, you know, I love the hoppiness of it, or I love the flavor, and be able to participate in that discussion around what you're drinking. And you know, and so, you know, like in terms of how we create that flavor, it really is made the same way that we make our craft beer. The steps are the same. We change the ingredients. So, you know, obviously we use less malt, but we use different specialty malts that don't ferment out. We use, you know, the same hops, you know, so we use yeast, you know, so you're still getting the flavors that you typically do from yeast. You're just not getting the alcohol piece. So, you know, it tends to be lighter bodied than regular beer, but all of the other flavor profiles are there.
And then, so there's also this argument online about should non-alcoholic beers cost as much as alcoholic beers, seeing that they don't have alcohol, right? So how do you navigate that? What do you have to say to them?
Oh, you know what? It really is like, it's education, you know, and there is an education component to it. It is something that we hear often, and you know, to be fair, you know, the cost to make a non-alcoholic beer is exactly the same. In some cases, maybe even more, because specialty malts are more expensive, but basically the same as a regular beer. And the process is the same. It takes the same amount of time. You know, so, you know, and so I think that conversation will change as more people try non-alcoholic beer and realize how non-alcoholic beer fits into their life, and recognizes it as a beverage. I mean, why do we pay so much for coffee? You know what I mean? Like it's not about getting drunk or getting a buzz, you know what I mean? Like, sure, it is sometimes, but not all the time, you know? And so, yeah, it's just, for us, it's just educating people and changing those perceptions. Yeah.
And Mitch, I think you brought up a good point. Like, even like with the coffee example, you know, by the time you go to Starbucks, let's say, and you're done making all of your substitutions, you know, like oat milk or coconut milk or whatever, add another shot of this or that or the other thing, you could easily pay $6 for a grande at Starbucks, and nobody bats an eye at that.
Oh, at least my daughter goes to Starbucks and it just shocks me. I'm like,
how? Yeah.
How can you? It's like $14 for 2 drinks for her and her friend. Like, doesn't make sense.
So I think it is. I think you do have a point with, like, it's about changing the perception, because, you know, similarly, like if you get like a bottle of like organic kombucha or something from the grocery store, it doesn't cost you the same as a can of like Diet Coke.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I definitely think that I think there's going to be a shift in like consumer perception of the value of the non-alcoholic drinks as well.
And I think it'll be really interesting, because there's a lot of innovation happening right now on the craft beer side, and kind of getting back to that crowded market. Like, I don't necessarily at this stage see it as crowded, because I think that, like, you know, there's going to be a ton of innovation, and that innovation is going to create interest, and it's going to make the market grow. And I think as that innovation happens, you know, because as people become more willing to pay a premium for non-alcoholic beers, it's going to allow us to create more interesting beers that we can charge a premium for, you know, which is going to kind of spur innovation, and, you know, yeah, it's going to be really neat. Like, there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff that comes out of that.
And seeing how passionate you are about the health and wellness space, I mean, are we going to see more health and wellness products from Mitch down the line? Like, are you going to hit us with Libra teas, for example, 1 or 2 years from now? I mean, what's cooking?
Oh, geez. I mean, we are, yeah, we're always working on stuff. We went through a process actually kind of right prior to COVID hitting, which kind of worked out in our favor. In that, we're kind of looking at the beer space, and I mean, we're based in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, so we're on an island of 150,000 people, and so there's only so much beer that people can drink, and so we were sort of looking at it from the perspective of like, we need to really change our perception internally to be less of a brewery and more of a beverage company, and we want to start innovating. We want to continue to innovate in beer, but we also want to innovate in other product lines. And so we had kind of made the decision at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit, and we had no other option but to like kind of pivot and innovate, because, all of our bars and restaurants closed down. All of everyone's bars and restaurants closed down. So we lost a huge chunk of our business from kegs. So, we had to sort of shift and start launching products outside of the beer space. And so that really allowed us to, make that change much quicker. To be completely honest, I don't know that Libra would be out yet had it not been for COVID. We'd probably still be talking about it. So with that said, yes, we are, definitely moving into that space on the alcohol side of things, certainly with like low calorie, low carb beers and seltzers. On the non-alcoholic side of things, right now we're really focused on building out our core lineup of beers. So right now we've got Libra Pale Ale, we've got a Libra Hazy IPA that's going to come out in the next, where are we at? Probably in the next month. And then we're working on a lager, we're working on a sour, we're working on some other beers. So we're really going to kind of push the beers, and really start experimenting with stuff. And then, we've definitely talked about how we can do product line extensions from there, because not everyone, our goal really, like I said, I mean, kind of the mission or the purpose of Libra is to help people find their balance, and to provide an alternative for people that has all the complexity and the experience of alcohol without the alcohol. And so recognizing that not everyone likes craft beer, I could definitely see us in the future expanding that line into, be it, cocktails or some type of like hop tea or other sort of non-alcoholic alternatives.
What about a wine? Would that be on? Or is that a faux pas to make that crossover?
I've only tried a couple of non-alcoholic wines, and I think it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I think with the non-alcoholic wines, either they. Well, I mean,
it tastes like grape juice.
I was just going to say it.
Yeah,
it is grape juice.
But actually, by the time you take the alcohol out, that's all that's left is the juice.
And it's interesting. So I've seen like there's sort of two, where like it's not fermented and it basically is, like a grape juice, or they ferment it out and then they remove the alcohol, which still leaves some of the complexity of the wine. I mean, but again, I think we're going to see a ton of innovation in that space as well. Yeah,
I think especially in like social situations too, when, if you're out with friends and everybody's drinking and you just don't want to have, you don't want to have an alcoholic beverage, but you want something that you enjoy sipping on in a social situation, but that's non-alcoholic. I don't think that there is a ton of options for that apart from, if you get like I said, like a Coke or an iced tea or something like that. But to have the option to have something a little bit more special, I guess, where you still feel like you're part of that entire vibe, but maybe you do still want to make it to the gym after. So you don't want to just, crush those 4 glasses of beer and then there's no gym after that. I mean, I guess
go home and crush.
Crush is a strong word. Maybe I chose the wrong word. Save joy 4 glasses.
No, but yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, you're entirely right. And I'm really excited for the day where, any restaurant you go in is going to have a non-alcoholic menu. They're going to have non-alcoholic cocktails, probably a couple of non-alcoholic wines, non-alcoholic beers, and we're starting to see it slowly. But, I think in the next 5 years, it's going to become the norm.
Yeah, and I think that the popularity of non-alcoholic drinks, it doesn't seem to be limited to a single generation, or at least what I'm seeing, I'm seeing baby boomers enjoying it as much as millennials, So I think those age demographics are changing some of people, or people's drinking habits are changing almost regardless of the age demographic. So do you find yourself targeting a particular demographic, or are you sort of casting a wide net and just putting out a great non-alcoholic craft beer for anyone to enjoy?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would say that we're definitely targeting more millennials and Gen Z in terms of our messaging, and I think you're right. It is across the board. People are choosing to drink less. I think that it is probably being driven by millennials and Gen Z, and then they're just choosing, Gen Z is just choosing not to drink at all, but I, kind of lost my train of thought there, but
but you're kind of, you said you're targeting more of, the millennials, maybe in your ad copy and the way you speak to them more so than a baby boomer, let's say.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But for us, it's super interesting, because it may be less of an age thing and more of, it's a lifestyle thing, I was speaking to someone yesterday who's, he's 49, and he was talking about, how Libra is going. And he was telling me about how much he loves it because, he's starting to train. He runs triathlons, and he's starting to train again for his next Ironman. And he can't, he can't drink beer while he's training. And so he loves that he can go out golfing and bring a couple of Libras. And he was like, oh, at first he was sort of like, oh, well, sales must be pretty slow that. And I'm like, well, no, actually, sales are going really well. He said, well, who's buying it? I'm like, everyone's buying it, and he was really shocked because for him, being a triathlete who's training, it made sense for him, but he couldn't understand, that other people would have occasions for it too. And I think, when you kind of start, talking to people and making the connections and realizing that again, it comes back to that, there is definitely an occasion for everyone to enjoy a non-alcoholic beer, whether you choose to drink or choose not to drink, right?
So Mitch, if people want to try Libra, where can they find Libra to buy? Yeah.
Well, they can buy it from our website at drinklibra.ca.
Okay.
And it's also available on a couple of other online retailers, well.ca, Sober Dry, as well as in the US, nabrews.com. And then we're also starting to get some in-store distribution. So we'll be launching in Sobeys in Atlantic, Canada here in the next month, and starting to get some distribution in retail stores in Ontario and in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. So pretty soon you'll be able to find it right across the country.
And I just want to touch on shipping quickly, because obviously shipping cans, they're heavy. So how do you deal with the shipping cost of, shipping something from, let's say, from PEI to Alberta? Do you bake that into the price? Do you make the customer pay for it? What do you do with the shipping?
Yeah. Oh, don't bring up shipping.
For a second, I was like, did he freeze? Is the call frozen?
My heart stopped for a second.
Shipping is a big, honestly, we talk to a lot of merchants, and shipping is probably the number one
Headache.
that always
Yeah.
comes up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially, doing it from PEI, it's not inexpensive. Yeah. So, I mean, we basically eat the shipping on 2/4s on 24 packs. And then, we charge a flat rate of $10 on 12 packs, which, basically covers half of the shipping. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It's shipping is a struggle.
I bet. And I don't think you said you ship into the States just yet, right? It's just across Canada, or
It's
do you
just
ship
across
into
Canada? Yeah, no, we haven't launched into the States yet with our own retail site. So soon.
Yeah. And honestly, it's crazy. Like some of the merchants we talk to that are based in Canada, let's say, and they do ship to the States, it's cheaper for them to ship to the States than to ship within Canada, which in some cases is like, you'd think that it would be cheaper to ship domestically, but I don't know if it's kind of, based on the product or maybe the carrier they're using could impact it, of course, as well. But shipping is just one of those things where, merchants always ask, what do I do with it? Do I add it into the price? Do I charge flat rate? Do I charge, free shipping after $50, after you spend $50 or whatever the case may be? But for you, I'm also curious because, if somebody tries Libra for the first time and they love it, do you see a pretty high returning customer rate, or are you still sort of working to build up, to acquire customers specifically for the Libra brand so that you can resell to them?
Yeah, no, actually we were just looking at this at a meeting I was in before. We have quite a few returning customers, which is fantastic. Yeah,
because then you don't have to spend to acquire that customer again. You acquire them once and then you can just keep reselling to them if they love your product, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great.
Okay, well, as we kind of have a few minutes left here, but I wanted to kind of bring it back to you as an entrepreneur, because we know that sometimes entrepreneurial stories, they almost come off as like an overnight success, like people think, they say, oh, you got so lucky. Like you're such a lucky guy that you were able to launch 2 businesses or they say they don't see all the work that went into it. So I'm wondering if you ever, do you remember a time when you were just kind of like ready to throw in the towel, or you're not sure, like, how is this going to, how are we going to keep going? How are we going to grow this thing? Basically something that makes your story like the real side of it, that's not all butterflies and rainbows and the seeming overnight success, but the actual grind that went into it.
Yeah, tell us about the blood, sweat, and tears, Mitch.
Yeah.
I want to hear that.
Which day? Yeah, where do we start? I mean, it's really a grind. I remember starting up. I've got a couple of kind of grinded out story. I mean, starting up was kind of crazy for us, in that, like, again, we kind of didn't know what we were doing, and there's 3 of us starting it up, and we had a staff of 8, and we had never run a bar before, and it was not, so I remember those early days of just like, we were doing the brewing, we were doing the deliveries, we were running the bar, and I remember our first day opening up, and we were in here at 6 a.m. I was helping Hoagie brew beer, and then we were doing deliveries in the afternoon, and then jumping behind the bar and working until midnight, and kind of getting to the end of the night, and like, not, there was such a focus on like getting the business open that we didn't actually think about what we were going to do when the business opened. And so we get to the end of the night and we're like, I've never done a cash out before. Do you know how to do a cash out? Like, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, what do we do? And one of our friends, partners was like, oh yeah, I can do that. And she grabs the receipt and like there's just so many like early day experiences of trying to work through the myriad of problems. But I mean, one of the more recent ones, which is, I guess, super relevant to this podcast, was launching our online store in the middle of COVID for our, not for Libra, but for our alcoholic beer. And it was right kind of early days. So, we weren't allowed to sell alcohol online on PEI prior to COVID. And so right when things were sort of taking off, I guess you would say, with COVID, or shutting down more so, the PEI Liquor Commission made the decision to shut down liquor stores. And this was on like a Wednesday. And then they sent an email to us on a Friday at 6 o'clock in the evening saying, we're now going to allow you to sell alcohol online. And so, everyone, just stopped what they were doing. And Marsha worked all weekend. And, by like the following Tuesday, we were launching our online store. Like the turnaround was crazy. We got it set up. Our tap room had been shut down, so we converted the tap room into a fulfillment center. And because liquor stores were closed down, like sales just went through the roof. So, then we were bringing our serving staff in to pack boxes and, bringing pallets, moved all the tables aside and set up packing stations, and just kind of turned it around on a dime, which, ultimately turned out to be was a huge success story. But like, those experiences seem to happen like every 2 or 3 months, where there's a crisis that you have to manage your way through, where things need to be turned around in short order. But, it's also those experiences that like are so valuable for team building. It brings everyone together and everyone does what they need to do. It doesn't matter, where you work in the company. You rally around a project because it has to get done, and there's just such a great sense of accomplishment when you kind of see it through.
Yeah. And, I've talked to a lot of merchants over the last 6 years, and I've heard a lot of stories and kind of a lot of what you're saying too, where it's just like in the moment you're kind of there and things seem crazy. And then when you look at it, when you're 5 years down the road, it's like you kind of almost look on it fondly, but when you're in that moment, it can kind of seem like everything's on fire. So, like we had one merchant that I spoke to, she was telling me about how she was fulfilling orders at 3 a.m. while she was in labor at the hospital with, I think, her first daughter. And, another one was telling me that he was fulfilling orders on the back of an ambulance. So, because there's nobody else to do it. So as an entrepreneur, you have to wear many hats. And especially when you're just starting out or just starting a new brand. So do you remember ever finding yourself in like one particularly sticky situation or something that really stands out that you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that, or, I can't believe we made it through that?
Yeah, geez. Well, there's another story. It's the stories all sort of seem to follow a similar trajectory to the launching the online store for us, where like there's a great idea or there's a crisis and we have to rally together and make it happen. But I guess probably 2 years into our tap room. So we had opened the tap room, and then we had someone approached us about opening up a kitchen as part of the tap room. And so we did that for about a year, and it really wasn't working out. So we decided we were going to take over the kitchen ourselves. And so on a Friday, we basically turned around the kitchen. It was kind of a snap decision. We had a conversation, and the person said that they were leaving, and so came and got all of his kitchen stuff. And so
You didn't even have knives to work with.
nothing.
Oh,
Like
wow.
in 3 hours, everything was gone, and we were like, okay, we're gonna open up the kitchen. And so, again, rallied the team together, like spent all night like calling people, figuring things out, like, and 24 hours later opened up the kitchen. And like, I mean, I probably shouldn't say this because it probably wasn't up to health codes. No, not at all. It totally was, but we like we literally went to like the Canadian Tire and bought like toaster ovens and hot plates, and because we had to order all new equipment that was going to be like a week or 2 weeks to get in, and we're just like, okay, you know what, this is what we're going to do. And we opened up the kitchen 24 hours later with like a limited limited menu, basically cooking on hot plates and toaster ovens.
You did it.
We did it, and no one knew.
Nobody
no one knew. The
exactly.
food was fantastic, But again, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you said. Like, you got to dig in and do what you need to do. Fake it till you make it, as they say, I guess.
Yeah, you literally had to like take your brewer hat or business owner hat off, put on your chef hat.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have probably just gone to like Costco and bought some of those ready-made meals, and then, like you said, just pop them into like the toaster oven, because you got to think on your feet, right? You never know,
Yeah.
especially when you're running a team as well. You just always got to be ready for those situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Mitch. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know I learned a lot about beer and non-alcoholic beer and PEI as well, where I've never been. So now I'm like, when we're able to go again, we'll have to make a trip out there and
Totally have to come
visit you guys. But thank you so much. Anta, thank you for joining me and co-hosting.
Thank you, Van. And thank you, Mitch. It was fun. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Oh, it was great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. We'll see everyone again on the next episode next month. So stay tuned for that.